I'm Emily Tran. I'm 27 years old. And for the last 3 years, my father has told anyone who'll listen that I'm just a waitress. Not an entrepreneur. Not a chef. Not someone building something from scratch. Just a waitress. At every family gathering, it's the same damn scene. My cousins line up in their tailored suits, listing off promotions, new titles, quarterly bonuses like trophies. And then there's me. No corner office, no LinkedIn brag, no polite applause from my aunts. Just the side eyes and the same question wrapped in fake concern. Still at that little cafe job? I've never worked at a cafe a day in my life. My father, Victor Tran, runs one of the largest real estate firms in Orange County. He built it from the ground up after immigrating here at 17, with nothing but an iron work ethic and a vision of the American dream that left no room for softness. In his world, success is cold-pressed in suits and signed with black ink. You don't cook, you don't serve, you conquer. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to take home EC. He enrolled me in debate club instead. When I snuck downstairs at midnight to learn my grandma's old recipes, he'd find me and say, "Put that energy into calculus, not cutting vegetables." But I kept cooking. Quietly. Relentlessly. I loved how a dish could say what words couldn't. How a smell could take someone home. It was the only thing that felt like mine. After college, he handed me a job offer at his firm like it was a birthright. I thanked him and turned it down. That's when I became just a waitress. He didn't ask where I worked. He didn't care. I could have been serving frozen fries at a bowling alley for all he knew. But the label stuck, and he weaponized it. Every time I was brought up in conversation, it was a punchline. "She's figuring it out," he'd say with that little smirk. Probably great at topping off coffee. My mother stayed silent. My older brother didn't dare challenge him. And I played along. I nodded. I smiled. I cleared plates at family dinners like a good daughter. But inside, I was boiling. Because here's what he never knew. I wasn't topping off coffee. I was building something. While he mocked me at those dinners, I was pulling 14-hour shifts at a fusion kitchen in Garden Grove, learning every station, studying plating, testing recipes until my hands blistered. I'd go home reeking of lemongrass and fish sauce, collapse for 4 hours, then wake up and do it all again. I wasn't serving. I was absorbing. Then came Leo. A former sous chef turned consultant with a Michelin past. Leo saw me during one of those brutal Friday night rushes and said, "You don't cook like an employee. You cook like you have something to prove." Damn right I did. Within 6 months, we went all in on a new concept. Our own place. No investors, no big splashy opening. Just a rented space, Craigslist furniture, and a menu built around memory. Every dish told a story. My story. We opened under a name I chose carefully. Chin. It means ripe in Vietnamese. Also means 9, the number of years I'd spent biting my tongue. Word got out fast. A few food blogs, then a local critic, then a segment on a public radio station. Our tables filled up. We had a 2-week wait list, but I kept quiet because I wasn't ready for him to find out. Until last week, I got a reservation notice from a corporate booking system. 10 top, private room. Name, Victor Tran. My father, my brother, his board. And I stood frozen, reading that email in the walk-in cooler, knowing damn well he didn't pick the place. His assistant must have. Knowing he had no idea I'd be the one serving his meal. I haven't told Leo. I haven't told my staff. But I'll be in the kitchen that night, watching him taste the first spoonful of can chua ka, the recipe I perfected after months of trial. The one Grandma used to make. Let's see if he still thinks I'm just a waitress. I didn't sleep the night before he came. I tried. I really did. But around 2 a.m., I found myself sitting on the kitchen floor of Chin, staring at the burner knobs, wiping down the same spotless counter for the 5th time, heart pounding like I was prepping for war. Because in a way, I was. I kept playing out how the dinner might go. Would he recognize the flavors? Would he care? Would he even look at the menu or just wave it away like he always did when he thought he already knew better? What I didn't expect was what I would feel the second he walked in. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vindication. It was fear. Not of him, but of what I'd let him take from me all these years. The joy, the confidence, the freedom to celebrate my wins without feeling like I had to justify them. The staff didn't know who he was. They just saw a high-powered party from a real estate firm. Leo was doing his usual charm at the front, and I stayed tucked in the kitchen, pretending to fine-tune plating. I wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. Then came the first course. Bonbeo, topped with scallion oil, crispy shrimp, and a drizzle of fish sauce caramel. My grandmother's recipe? Modernized. I watched through the slit in the kitchen door as the plates hit the table. And that's when I saw it. My father reaching for the soy sauce packet. I swear to God, I almost passed out from rage. He was about to drown a delicately balanced dish in sodium sludge like it was Panda Express. Leo caught him mid-reach, gently intercepting with a smile. "We recommend tasting it as is, sir. The balance is intentional." My father gave a tight nod and put the packet down, visibly annoyed. The meal went on. I kept watching from the shadows, watching him take bites, nod politely, sip wine, lean in to make a joke. It was maddening. He was enjoying himself, like he was just another guest, like the years of cutting me down to size never happened. But the kicker? Midway through the second course, Kamga Hoi An, made the traditional way with turmeric rice and poached chicken. He turned to the group and said, "You know, this place is surprisingly decent. Reminds me of something Emily used to mess around with in the kitchen before she grew up." I dropped the plating tongs. Leo turned toward me from the pass, caught the look on my face, and stepped closer. "You okay?" "No," I said, flat. "He's talking about me like I'm dead." Leo paused. "Do you want to go out there?" I shook my head. Not yet. Because the final course was mine. 100% mine. A dish I'd never dared put on the menu until now. It's called Chao Yo Heo, but it's not your average rice porridge. This one was made the way my grandma used to do it. Slow-simmered pork hock, congee creamy from bone marrow, finished with pickled mustard greens and a splash of house-made garlic chili oil. The story printed on the menu described it as a dish born from hardship, meant to warm you from the inside out. I watched as the servers placed the bowls down. My father stared at his for a moment. Then, slowly, he lifted the spoon and took a bite. He stopped. He looked down at the bowl again. And then he looked up, brows slightly furrowed, eyes scanning the room like something had just clicked in his head, but he couldn't quite place it. Leo stepped away from the pass and leaned toward me. "You ready?" I nodded. I walked out from the kitchen, apron still on, hands lightly dusted with flour. The room didn't notice at first, but Victor did. He stared at me like I was a ghost, his spoon frozen midair. I walked straight to the table, stopped right beside him, and said calmly, "Funny thing about chow. You don't realize how much love is in it until you know who made it." He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. "Emily?" And then, as if fate had been waiting for this moment, one of the junior execs pulled out his phone, opened the LA Times article from last week, and held it up to compare the photo to my face. Wait a second. You're the chef? You're the owner?" I smiled, small and sharp. "Welcome to Chin. I hope the food met your standards." Victor's face went slack. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just silence. I turned and walked back toward the kitchen. But before I made it past the host stand, I heard him call after me. Not loudly, not like a father, like a man trying to understand the ruins he's standing in. "Emily, why didn't you tell me?" I paused, just long enough for the whole table to hear. "Because you never asked." The walk back into the kitchen felt like slow motion. My legs were moving, but my brain was stuck replaying what had just happened. His face. My father's face when I said those 4 words, "because you never asked." It was the first time I'd ever seen confusion, regret, and Fear? All at once. It didn't feel victorious. Not yet. It just felt raw. Leo met me at the kitchen door, eyes wide. Holy hell, Em. You okay? I think so, I muttered, though my heart was hammering like I'd just run a marathon barefoot. He smiled gently. They're asking for you. Who? Everyone. I peeked out again. The energy in the room had shifted. The board members were buzzing like a pack of stunned hornets. My brother had that what the hell did I miss look on his face. And my father, he was still sitting back in his chair, one hand on his napkin like he didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't ready for a family reunion. Not on my turf. Not yet. So I did what I knew best. I focused on the food. The rest of the evening went on like a strange dream. The staff moved seamlessly. The guests ate, whispered, stared. And I stayed hidden behind the pass, checking every dish like it was a life or death decision. But that night didn't end with dessert. Around 10 p.m., the dining room had emptied, and I was in the walk-in, reorganizing produce to distract myself. That's when Leo knocked lightly on the metal door. He's still here, he said. I didn't have to ask who. Wants to talk. Said he wouldn't leave until he did. My stomach twisted. I'd waited so long for him to see me. Now he had. And it wasn't enough. He wanted a narrative, an explanation, something he could mold and spin until it made him look like the father who always believed in me. I stepped into the now empty dining room. He stood at the center, alone, staring at a framed menu on the wall. The one with the words inspired by the dishes my grandmother used to make, updated with the lessons she never got to teach me. Emily, he said, turning. This place, it's impressive. I didn't respond. I had no idea. If you'd told me, I cut him off, softly but firmly. You would have made it about you. That stopped him. He blinked. You would have said it was your hard work that gave me this opportunity, that I learned persistence from your example, that you always knew I had it in me, after 3 years of mocking me. His lips tightened. That's not fair. I laughed, bitter. You called me a waitress. You told people I was wasting my life. At Grandpa's funeral, you introduced me to a business partner as the one who plays with recipes. Silence. Then carefully, do you know how hard it is to build something from nothing? Yeah, I said. I do. I just didn't have to crush someone else to do it. He inhaled sharply like he'd been slapped, and for a moment I thought he might apologize. Just once. Just say, I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. But instead he said this. Well, if you ever decide to sell, I know investors who'd line up for something like this. You've built a good brand. That's when something in me broke. He wasn't here to make peace. He was here to position himself, to find a way to own what I'd created. I smiled, calm and cold. That's funny, I said, because someone already made an offer. He tilted his head. You're selling? I didn't say that. I said someone made an offer. Who? I reached into the front pocket of my apron and pulled out the folded card I'd carried for 2 weeks. I handed it to him. His eyes scanned the embossed gold lettering. His mouth opened. Then shut. Then opened again. It was from the Nguyen Group, his biggest competitor. A Vietnamese-American hospitality group he despised for taking over a property he once lost in a bidding war. They loved the food, I said simply. Said it reminded them of home. You can't be serious. I'm considering it. He stared at me, eyes wide. You'd sell to them? After everything I built? I stepped in, close enough for him to smell the garlic on my sleeves. This isn't your legacy, Dad. It's mine. He clenched the card like he wanted to tear it in half. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because for the first time in my life, he was the one with no power at the table. After he left that night, the card from the Nguyen Group still clutched in his hand like it burned, I stood there alone in the dining room. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned, but something had shifted. He knew I wasn't bluffing, and I wasn't. I hadn't accepted the offer, but I hadn't rejected it either. Not because I wanted to sell, but because I finally understood what it felt like to have leverage. I didn't sleep much that week. Every night I sat with the paperwork, rereading their offer, running the numbers. It was solid, way more generous than expected. But something kept stopping me from signing. Deep down, I knew it wasn't about money anymore. It was about something bigger, something no contract could buy. The next day, things got strange. I started getting calls from unknown numbers. A food branding specialist offering unsolicited rebranding ideas. An advisor asking if I'd considered franchising. A consultant who'd worked with my father's firm in the past, offering a friendly chat over coffee. It was laughably transparent. I knew how my father operated, never directly. Always through channels. Whisper campaigns, third-party pressure, sudden interest from people who'd previously ignored me. He was trying to circle me, control the narrative, again. But I wasn't 23 anymore. I drafted a press release with Leo's help, announcing a new concept series under Chin, limited-time heritage menus featuring guest chefs from the Vietnamese diaspora. It was bold, unexpected, and guaranteed media attention. We launched the campaign with a teaser video I narrated myself. Not polished, not branded. Just me, standing in front of our walk-in cooler, telling my story. The truth. I didn't name my father. I didn't have to. I said, "For years I thought I had to earn a seat at someone else's table. Turns out I was meant to build my own." The video hit 500,000 views in 2 days. I started getting messages from women I didn't know. Cooks, artists, even engineers, telling me they'd shown the clip to their parents during arguments. Telling me they finally felt seen. And then came the message that stopped everything. It was from my aunt, my dad's younger sister. She'd always been quiet, background noise in family events, sipping her wine and saying nothing while the men talked. But her email wasn't quiet at all. She wrote, "Emily, I watched your video." I cried. I kept thinking about my own dreams, the ones I buried because your father said they weren't practical. I was accepted into the CIA Culinary Institute when I was 19. I turned it down because Victor said, "Our family doesn't do aprons. Thank you for breaking what I couldn't. Love, Aunt Lynn." That message hit me harder than any of the praise or press, because for the first time, I realized I wasn't just carving a path for myself. I was clearing the overgrowth for the women who'd been forced to walk off the road before they ever got started. The power didn't come from revenge. It came from refusal, from not letting them rewrite my story to make it fit their image. So when the invitation came, an engraved envelope with my full name on it, I knew what I had to do. It was for the Tran Family Business Summit, something they'd never invited me to before. A closed-door event at the Ritz where real estate developers, finance execs, and legacy entrepreneurs sipped champagne and compared portfolios. The invite said dress formal. Family presentation required. IRSP'd. Yes. But I didn't go alone. The night of the event, I walked into the ballroom in a sleek black pantsuit. Not a dress, not an apology. Leo walked beside me, but I wasn't leaning on him. I stood tall, confident, calm. My father's face when he saw me was unreadable. Maybe he thought I was there to cave, to join. He stood on stage first, giving his usual speech about tradition, growth, and generational wealth. And then he welcomed our next family speaker, expecting my brother, no doubt. But I walked up instead. I took the mic. The room hushed. I smiled. "Good evening. My name is Emily Tran, and I own and operate Chin, a culinary brand rooted in heritage, resilience, and independence." There were murmurs, eyebrows raised, phones came out. I kept going, calm, unshaken. I was told tonight was about family business, so I came to say this clearly. I am not a branch of Tran and Associates. I'm not an extension of anyone's legacy. I built my own, from scratch, without capital, without connections. And despite being told for years that what I was doing didn't count, my father's jaw tightened. But he said nothing. I looked straight at him. And just so there's no confusion, my business is not for sale. Not to anyone. Not anymore. Then I stepped down. I barely made it back to my seat before someone tapped my shoulder. A woman in her 50s, gray streak in her bun, tears in her eyes. I wish my daughter could have heard that before I pushed her into law school. I nodded, holding back tears of my own. But the real twist came 10 minutes later when Leo leaned over and whispered, "Check your phone." I opened it. A Google alert. My name. Headline: Real estate titan's daughter declines $8 million acquisition, goes viral instead. Subheadline: Victor Tran's empire no longer the only Tran business making headlines. I looked up and met my father's eyes across the ballroom. For once, he looked small. A week after the Tran Business Summit, the press was still chewing on what happened. A few blogs called it an act of rebellion. Some newspapers labeled it an independent daughter's bold statement. But those headlines missed the point. It wasn't rebellion. It was reclamation. And while the buzz swirled outside, something quieter, sharper, was unraveling behind closed doors. It started with whispers in the real estate community. Some longtime partners of my father began pulling back from joint ventures. Then came the audit notice. Quiet, but devastating. The state launched an investigation into irregularities in Tran and Associates' past development deals, following a whistleblower report filed by a former project manager. It wasn't me. I didn't have to do a thing. Turns out, the people who spent decades watching my father bulldoze people, sometimes literally, were just waiting for the right moment to speak up. My coming forward wasn't the cause, but it was the crack in the wall. And once one person dared to question his image, others followed. Within 2 months, 2 projects were frozen. By month 3, one of his most trusted contractors publicly broke ties after leaked documents exposed that environmental permits had been falsified for a coastal build. My father didn't get arrested. He didn't lose everything. But something much worse happened to a man like him. He lost control of the narrative. For the first time in decades, he wasn't the one shaping perception. His name no longer opened doors automatically. People started asking questions. Investors hesitated. Reporters dug. His power, the thing he clung to like oxygen, began to slip, inch by inch, headline by headline. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. I went back to work. We opened our second Chin location in West Hollywood. Smaller, a bit more experimental. I brought Aunt Lynn on as a guest chef for our heritage menu launch. Watching her plate food with shaky but determined hands was healing in a way I didn't know I needed. She cried on opening night. So did I. My brother came by one afternoon, unannounced. He stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding 2 coffees and a Tupperware of Grandma's steamed banana cake. "I know I didn't speak up," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. I was scared. "I know," I replied. "But you're here now." He handed me the cake. "It's not as good as yours." "Damn right." I laughed, and we sat on the floor like we used to when we were kids, quiet but honest. As for my father, we haven't spoken since the summit. But last week, a letter came to the restaurant. No return address, just my name, handwritten in a familiar, stiff script. Inside was a clipping from Forbes Asia, an article on women-led culinary ventures. He'd circled my photo. No note, no apology. Just a single sentence in the margin. "You were never small." I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and went back to prep. Sometimes justice doesn't show up in handcuffs or courtroom drama. Sometimes it's quieter, like a name slipping out of a room full of important men, no longer spoken with certainty. That kind of fall? It echoes. And me? I didn't burn his legacy. I built mine high enough that it cast a shadow over his. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have known better, family, mentors, even yourself. Just know this: their silence doesn't define you. Your voice does. I'd love to hear your story in the comments, what you've reclaimed, what you're still fighting for. And if mine meant something to you, maybe stick around. There are more stories coming. And maybe someday, yours too.